very committed to helping with very specific Louisiana issues. I know, for example, that the Corps of Engineers needs to be dramatically reformed because most of the damage of Katrina was man-made, not natural. I also know that the Federal Emergency Management Administration needs to be overhauled because in many ways it actually slowed down help coming in rather than accelerated it. And there are ways that are dramatically more effective in response. I was very involved in that period and very concerned. I also believe that the state should get the same share of offshore royalties that people get on land, so you ought to be getting 50% of the royalties for offshore royalties. And as part of that process, there should be a genuine commitment to rebuilding the wetlands along the coast because they are vital both in terms of being a buffer against hurricanes, but they're also vital as a nursery for much of the seafood that is at the heart. This is the largest seafood producing state in the United States, and keeping the fisheries active and healthy is a very key part of economic development. So from my standpoint, when I look at the Gulf, I see energy, I see tourism, and I see seafood, and we have to have a balanced plan that all three are being taken care of. So you have my commitment to work on that kind of balanced approach. In addition, from a jobs perspective, there are several things I'm doing that relate directly to Louisiana. One is that I would attach and modernize unemployment compensation so that if you signed up for unemployment compensation, you automatically signed up for a business training plan so you would learn a new skill. So we would increase the employability of people, not just pay them to sit idly. And realize that somebody who got 99 weeks of unemployment could have literally earned an associate degree in that length of time. And in North Dakota, where we have a very serious challenge because the rise in oil production has dropped unemployment to 3.5%. But that actually overstates unemployment because there are 16,000 jobs in North Dakota they have not been able to fill because the people who are unemployed don't have the right training. And therefore, if we had an unemployment training relationship, all those folks would be getting retrained while they're on unemployment so they could take the jobs that already exist. And you'd be basically close to zero unemployment in North Dakota. That's how big impact energy can be. And of course, down here along the coast, the average offshore job is over $80,000 a year. So these are good jobs, and we want more of them, and I'm going to talk about that in just a second. This campaign really comes down for the Republicans, I think, to a very simple choice. I am the one candidate who represents the Reagan approach to a visionary leadership. This whole campaign, in a sense, is built around Proverbs and the statement that without vision the people perish. And so I've been trying to develop and trying to communicate very large proposals. For all the young people who are here today, for example, I have proposed a personal Social Security savings account so you could take your tax money, your share of the Social Security taxes, you could put it into an account you would control. It would build up interest your entire working lifetime. This is not a theory. Chile has been doing this for over 30 years. It's been done in Galveston, Texas, the only place in the U.S. to do it. We know what the result is. People get 2 to 3 times as much retirement money. It's their money, so no politician can touch it. They get to retire when they want to. No politician sets an automatic legal age. And they're in a position that they have an estate. Today, if you're paying Social Security tax, if you die before 65, the money goes to the government, it doesn't go to your family. But under the Chilean model, that money is your money. It becomes an estate for your family. And it turns out, over a generation, we would reduce the inequality of wealth in America by 50%. Because every single working American would become a saver and an investor. And they would ride the economy as it grew. It also turns out when you have that level of savings, and in Chile, 72% of the economy is in the savings. Literally, their savings pool. is 72% of the economy. It is so big, they now allow Chileans to invest outside Chile because they don't have enough investments in Chile. Now, compare that to the debt we have. And so, this is a plan which increases the size of our economy. It's estimated after a generation, our economy will be $6 to $7 trillion bigger because of the reinvestment of all those funds. It empowers the individual to control their life. It gives you a bigger return. And so that's an example of really big change. And so this has been a campaign that it's been harder to penetrate, frankly, than I thought it would be, because the political process and the news media process doesn't pick up big new ideas very quickly. But there's one that they've begun to pick up. And I was on CBS News this morning, on Fox this morning, and it was very clear from the opening of the show that we have found an issue in which a big idea is connected to a specific reality in a way that is media covered. And that, of course, is gasoline. Now, what I proposed is actually a very big idea. I proposed that we have an American energy policy so that America becomes independent in producing energy so that no future president ever bows to a Saudi king. Now, I want you to contrast this with what the president's been doing. The president went to Brazil, and the president was for Brazilian drilling offshore. And in fact, we loaned $2 billion to buy equipment to drill offshore. And the president said to the Brazilians, we want to be your best customer. That is exactly backwards. You want an American president to go around the world selling American products, not buying foreign products. And then the president announced in the last couple of days, they've asked the Saudis to produce more oil. Now, I'm going to go into this in a little bit of detail because I think this captures in one act the destructiveness of the Obama administration and the degree to which it undercuts America, weakens America, and you can't figure out who he thinks he's president of. He's not president of Saudi Arabia or Venezuela. And yet, here's what they're doing. First of all, remember, the president's been going around for 2 weeks because he began to realize 2 weeks ago that my campaign for $2.50 a gallon gasoline was catching on. And so he's made a whole series of speeches now on energy, and he keeps attacking us. Now, his first attack, he said, there is no silver bullet, which is baloney. There is a silver bullet. It's called drilling. And in fact, it works. The president said, you can't really affect the price of oil. Why don't you think about this? Meanwhile, his Secretary of Anti-Energy, Dr. Chu, said 2 days ago how grateful he was that the Saudis were going to pump more oil because he hopes it will drive prices down. Now, why is it that the Obama administration believes that producing more Saudi oil will drive prices down, but producing more American oil won't drive prices down? That's what you think about how truly stupid this is. Now, let me go a step further. The president had a solution. He said drilling won't work. But he had a solution. Does anybody here know what it was?
Algae.
Bleach your tires. Okay, I'm just curious. How many of you already knew algae was the answer? See, I think this is a sign we're winning. Now, we're about to produce a poster and a coffee cup and a mouse pad and a screensaver. And then we're going to produce a desk set. And you're going to have a little jar of algae with an Obama label and $10 a gallon. And then you're going to have a drilling rig with a new 2012 label and $2.50 a gallon, and you choose. So the president says algae is the answer. Right now, it turns out last year, the association that studies algae said algae is at least 10 years away from being commercially viable and would require oil to be between $240 and $850 a barrel to be doable. This is like saluted. This is one of those Barack Obama, Twilight Cuckoo Land, what fantasy do I have now? It's nuts. So he, by the way, has not repeated this because I made fun of him, and they realized, because I said, I want to run a fall campaign. I'll go anywhere in Louisiana, and I'll say, you have a choice between President Algae at $10 and President Drilling at $2.50. You decide which future you think makes more sense. And I'll bet you there's not a precinct in the state that votes for $10 a gallon gas. Not a single, I don't care what their background is, because it's real. This is where Obama's got a huge problem with him. He's going to have $1 billion campaign. You can't buy enough advertising to offset driving past a gas station. I mean, people are going to see reality every time they drive down the street. So what they're now trying to do is they're trying to get the Saudis to pump enough oil to bring the price down just enough to get through the election so they can go back to a high price, right? And let's be clear what the Obama long-term strategy is. It is to have oil so expensive that alternatives become reasonable. Now that's his model. So here's the other part of it. It was just kind of fun. Yesterday he suggested that I belong to the Flat Earth Society and said that, he actually took a line I've been using, I'm talking about Christopher Columbus, but I've been using it with reference to Mitt Romney and the space program. So he took the same line. One of his speechwriters apparently saw it. And he said, I wouldn't have believed Christopher Columbus, and I belong to the Flat Earth Society. And my answer is very different. He belongs to the Sierra Club Flat Earth Society. Because the truth is, we have had a revolution in drilling technology. Now, ironically, the president knows this when it's natural gas. In his speeches, he says drilling will not work. And then he comes back 2 pages later and he says we've had a great breakthrough in natural gas. We went from 7 years supply to 125 years supply. And this great breakthrough, the president's number is, this great breakthrough is going to create 600,000 new jobs in this decade. This is the president's language. Now, what's fascinating about this is, I want somebody in the White House press corps to have the nerve to go up to the president and say, how do you think they found all the natural gas? Because, of course, it was by drilling. So the president indirectly is admitting drilling works in Saudi Arabia. It just doesn't work in America. He's admitting drilling works for natural gas. It just doesn't work for oil. And now here comes the last part. The president's been saying the U.S. only has 2% of the world's reserves, which is not true. But here's what's cool. He based that on a number of proven recoverable reserves, which was 22 billion barrels. They announced this last week in North Dakota that the new technology made available 24 billion barrels. So even by the president's standard, we've now doubled the U.S. reserves in one state, North Dakota. Now the people in North Dakota actually believe that with another generation of technology over the next 30 years, that there's another 500 billion barrels below the 24 billion. Now, what does this mean? This is where it gets really exciting. First of all, it means if we had a president who favored American jobs over Saudi jobs, and let me be really clear, the president may think it's fine for the jobs to be in Saudi Arabia. I think they should be in Louisiana. The president may think it's fine to send billions of dollars a year to Saudi Arabia. I'd rather spend the billions of dollars a year in Louisiana paying for the energy. The president may think it's okay for the government of Saudi Arabia to earn the royalties. I'd rather have the state of Louisiana and the government of the United States earn the royalties. The president may be confused about whose country he's supposed to represent. I'm not. So here's the most powerful long-term side effect. Remember, if we develop American energy, we're going to create millions of new jobs. We're going to lower the cost